We're live!
We did it, guys!
Welcome to the Media Light Network podcast.
Oh my gosh, watching all you guys in the chat room. We've got so many of you here and more joining, and we are excited. I mean, I'm crying already just seeing all of you. Our family. This is what this is all about. We've been dreaming this for months and months and months. I remember when Luis came to us and said, I've got this great idea. We've got to do this because we have a network of over 40 different nationalities that have come through, our nations that have come through our Media Light program. And then we've got networks all over the world that have not been to our campus where we join together physically, but virtually. We've got our partners and all over the world. We've got friends that we always say friends are family we choose, and we just welcome all of you. We're so excited for this. There's so much coming up in the months to come. We've been planning and working hard, our teams, and we've got so much to give to you and you to give to each other. And many of you are going to join this in interviews. And we've got a lot of assets and resources to share with each other and just continue to connect globally. That's what's so unique and exciting about this network, is that we're global. We're all of these nations. I've already seen Rafi in Japan, Mim and Raina and Joanne and Mark and Vi and the boys and Gary and so many others of you in Thailand, Philippines. We've got so many representations there, Ria, and I'll name more when I start chatting with you in the chat room. But Korea, we've got people in Korea and Ethiopia, Germany, Honduras is on. Here in America, where we are right now. So we're just excited to see all of you and continue to keep those chats going and be with us.
Very cool. Okay, so welcome to the Media Light Network. And if you are called to represent Jesus in this digital age, then we're called to help equip you. And every time you tune in to one of our episodes, we're going to do these weekly. You'll find encouragement, helpful resources, and a personal connection to people around the world.
I'm going to see you in the chat room. I'm going to go now.
All right. Really cool. This is our maiden episode, and I want to go ahead and start by saying thanks to Mark Rosakai. He's our showrunner, and he has pulled together the team that has put this together, a team, again, spanning many nations, Philippines, Thailand, Ethiopia, America. And I want to say thanks so much also to Luis Barahona. He has been technical support and art and the promo videos, and he's just going to have such a huge hand in helping to produce this podcast. Really excited about it. And here's what you can expect. In every episode, I will kick it off with a 15 to 20 minute content block where we'll start a discussion and I'll do a presentation on it. And then we will segue to an interview with somebody that we feel is a good example of being a mission innovator. And they are using media and the arts in the gospel. And so we're excited to lift those people up, and then that will roll into a global open mic where you can continue in the chat box like what's happening now, and you can ask questions and we'll get a response from the one that is being interviewed. So a lot coming up in every episode. They're all going to be about an hour long, and we're going to do this once a week. Right now, this is the time slot. So wherever you're at around the world, we welcome you to the Media Light Network podcast. This is our vision. Our vision is that people who have never found their place in ministry are going to discover what God wants them to do, because there are a lot of people And Sherry and I have been traveling like gypsies for the last 40 years. And we've been all over the planet. And as we go, we meet young people who are serious disciples of Jesus. But a lot of them, they look at the traditional roles that are in the church, and they just don't see their place. But man, they want to represent the Lord, and they feel like they're supposed to. But those traditional roles don't seem to fit them. And they also notice that largely the world is not listening to the church anymore. But there is a microphone out there, and you're able to get it if you'll learn the skills. And that's our first vision, is that if you are one of those people, this is where you're going to start to have the lights come on, and God is going to be able to show you what it is He wants you involved with, what it is that you yourself are called to do. Second thing we have a vision for is new innovative outreaches being launched around the world in many nations, that people will come up with new ideas that will bring the gospel to their generation and to their communities in a fresh way, in a way that goes into the mind, into the heart, and they receive what God is saying to them. Thirdly, we see thousands of people finally just having the courage to just start. You see it, you think about it, but most people just don't start. And this podcast for us, because frankly, we have never taught live streaming as a school. We've been in operation for 10 years, building a community from students around the world at our campus in northern Thailand, and also in our online school. And we've been building this community of students, and that part has been strong. We started off focusing on documentaries, and then we moved from there to creating short videos. Again, normal film production style. Then in the last 3 or 4 years, we've started to emphasize more all that you can do with a cell phone. And now with the lockdown, we are having to push into brand new areas, technical things we've never had to learn before, but you just have to start. So that's why today's so exciting to us, because it's our startup day, and we just begin. And once you get started, you can always get better, but you just need the courage to take that first big jump off the high dive. We have a vision that those who are early, we coined the phrase media missionaries many, many years ago. And we think it best describes what we are, and who we're trying to rally. And that's another part of our vision, is that we're the place for the beginner. And so as you take that leap and you make your start, then you begin and you start to grow in your skill level, beyond just go for it, to sharpen it up, polish it. You can't just say, oh, good enough for the church. That's not good enough anymore, because it's a global, everything we do is pretty much being done on the internet, and it's got to be done with excellence. You got to grow in your craft. And then another thing that we have a vision for, that we think this podcast can help with, is the establishment of real friendships around the world. You're going to find that there are people in your nation who are out there. They have the same kind of heart you do. And we hope that you're going to meet each other. You'll meet in the chat box. You can go on from that to exchanging information, really start talking to each other, and then have meetups in your country and organize collaborations where you all put your skills together, and the things that God has put in your hand. One has a camera, another, that's how a lot of guerrilla style media gets produced. And that's worked for all of us as we all we just form these cooperatives. And of course, the biggest reason for this is our vision of a harvest. We just see thousands of people around the world coming to Christ because you are learning to speak to them using the modern language of media. So we're really excited about that. This first episode, our maiden episode, it's dedicated to God's new messengers. And we're going to talk about God's new messengers for the next 2 episodes. and get you started. And we really hope that if the Lord reaches out and He calls you through our time together, that you're going to raise your hand and say, "Here I am, Lord, send me. I want to be what you need out of me." Okay, I want to start off with actually a cartoon. It's the first time I ever produced a cartoon, and this was done in about 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And I worked with Josie Carrion, and she's gone on to a great career in media production as a professional. And but we produced this, and it really has I felt like it really it put the message that we want you to get. And so I just want to play the cartoon, and then I want to talk to you about it in just a minute.
Once upon a time, only the powerful elite controlled what we read, listened to, and watched. But the digital age saw a revolutionary shift. The power of communication was transferred from the elite few to the people. Media is now in our hands. Now, the power of the gospel can be released to change destinies all around the world with the single click of a button. A new breed of missionary is now needed, a media missionary. Are you called to be one? Introducing an online school that empowers you to become a media missionary, Media Light Online. Learn the basic tools of media production, develop your leadership skills, strengthen your spiritual foundations. It's the school that fits right in your pocket, so you can learn on the go. Take up the powerful tools of modern media and speak to your generation. Join the media revolution, powered to the people. Visit MediaLightAsia.com.
You know, one of the biggest changes in the history of the human race started about 100 years ago when a new language was developed, and it became a world language. You know, we've only had 3 world languages. First was whatever Adam and Eve in the world, all humans spoke at the dawn of time before Babel, and everybody could communicate. And then we moved from there. After the Tower of Babel, it got shattered. And then there came a second world language, which was Greek. And Greek was forced upon the world by Alexander the Great because he conquered the known world. It wasn't all the humans, but it was everybody that they knew about was under what became the Roman Empire. And Alexander had such a high view of Greek culture because he had been trained as a child in Greek language and Greek culture, and he brought it to the world, and he mandated that whatever language you speak, you had to also speak Greek. Well, and that is, you know, in Galatians it says, in the fullness of time, God sent his son. And this is the era that Jesus entered the world through. And so in this time, that's when the Bible came together, the New Testament of the Bible came together. And even the Old Testament was translated into Greek. And it was a brief window in human history where that you could go anywhere in the world and you could read this message, and you could read it in Greek and everybody could understand it because it was a world language. But then in the last 100 years, a new world language has been developed, and it's media. Media actually started centuries ago with handwriting because we found a way to capture words by scratching a symbol, and you could remake the symbol and say the word again. And then that rolled into 1400s, and they invented the movable type, and they could put those words on a piece of paper. But 100 years ago, media took off because we had to have electricity to have media. It's like rock and roll. You can't have rock and roll without amplifiers. And so that musical form never rose because we didn't have amplifiers. Once we had electricity and amplifiers, you could have rock and roll. And once we had electricity, media began to spin out. And it went from radio to television to the birth of the internet, and finally to one of the most amazing things ever done was this: just put everything in something so small, and now everybody has the tools. It's just such an amazing age, and the tools just keep getting cheaper and cheaper because, you know, before radio To run a radio station is millions of dollars, and you had to have big equipment and towers, and oh no, that's in your cell phone now. And the same is true for a TV station. We've all got that in our hands, and actually, I'm using a consumer level digital photography camera to talk to you right now. I could be using my cell phone. I just wanted a little nicer picture. And there's 3 points I want to make about this digital age that we all find ourselves in. First of all, the equipment is getting cheaper and cheaper, and it's almost at the point of free for things that used to cost millions of dollars. And those things, like the video said, it used to be that the power of the microphone was in the hands of the privileged elite, and they controlled what could be said to the world. And that has fallen. It is power to the people. And the democratization of media means anybody who wants the microphone can get one. Then it's for you to earn an audience and earn a people that will listen to you. But the tools do not hold you back. The second thing that is not holding you back are the gatekeepers. It used to be in media that you had to get government permits, you had to find investors. There were all these outside groups. You had to be certified in some way. That's gone. You don't need permission. There's no one that's in government. There's not even anyone in church that has to give you permission to be a media missionary. If God is calling you to be one, you can say, Lord, I will go, and you begin that day. The third thing is no one's in charge of the process. It's not like becoming an attorney or an accountant, and you have to go through a certain process and you have to be certified by a certain group. There are many ways to learn. Now, you have to learn because there's a basic skill set that is required, and there's a new way of thinking that you're going to have to get, but you can get it in pieces, and that's why we're here. We want to help you get your hands on the training and the mindset that you need so that you can prosper in this new ministry. So you're in charge of the process. It's all up to you. Now, what we're missing, and I hope we can find our way here, is we need models, because this is a new language. This is an entirely new circumstance. It's never been here before in the history of the world that any human can speak to the whole world. We've never had that opportunity, but it's in our hands right now. But we need models for ministry. And the first, when I was a child growing up, we heard a lot in preaching and other ways to share a mindset. And the model was Joshua. It was about taking land. It was about, overcoming the idolaters and bringing gospel, sort of a conquest mindset. Well, bad news is, or maybe the good news, who knows? We're never going to be able to use Joshua again. There's just one world, and we're in it. And this world has shifted. And if you don't hear anything else I say in this content block, please pay attention to this. We're in Babylon. We're not in virgin land, taking the territory, establishing a new thing. Those days are gone. We're all in Babylon. The Babylon system is all over the world. We're in Babylon, and we need a new model. And it's not a conquest model. It's a model more like Daniel. Now, Daniel had no power. He had a power within the system that the system gave to him in honoring him, but he lost that power a lot. If you watch Daniel's career, he'll be popular, and then he's forgotten, and then he's stripped of power, and then he goes through a lot of things. But the point is, he's a stranger in a strange culture. He is a voice from the outside. He's in exile. And, in Peter's writings in the New Testament, he greets the saints, and he says, I write to the exiles. And he's writing to people who are still living in their hometown. You know, they haven't been moved out of the place of their birth. But Peter says, you're an exile. You're an outsider to your own culture, and exiles have no power. They don't have political power. They don't have money. They don't have big real estate. They don't have an army. They're just voice. All they have is their voice, but they have their integrity and they have their sincerity. And if the God they serve is a true God, and if he gives them words no one can resist, that's what a missionary is. You go out of your culture where you can just talk among yourselves, and you find yourself in another culture and you don't speak their language and you're not on their in group, but you want to speak for the Lord to them, and we become Daniels and we become missionaries. And that's what God is doing around the world. We need a new model of ministry. And that model is, I think, best found in Daniel. The Old Testament prophets were 100-year phenomenon. The world changed. Israel was facing a situation they had never been in before. And God raised up for about 100 years. When you look in your Bible and you see all those books, you know, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, the books of the prophets, they all came out in around 100 years of each other. This was a new thing. God had always had messengers, but this was a new messenger, a new kind of messenger. These were songwriters, and they were dramatists, and they wore costumes sometimes. And they would dress themselves and play a part in society. Some of them were apocalyptic visionaries, and they would wrap huge ethical themes, and they would wrap it around like mind-bending visions, and they would describe a wheel within a wheel, and they were captivating to the people. And when they stepped forward, they understood that above all, they had to be storytellers. They were messengers of the Most High God, but the format of their message was going to be to bring a story, because story, as we will learn as we go forward as a people now, and as we start to learn more, we're going to understand that stories are the operating system of the human mind, that we immediately connect ourselves to stories. And so we're going to have to become like those great prophets, master storytellers. And they told stories about a wife's adultery. They told a story about a noble leader being stripped naked and put in chains in public. They told stories of wars in the spirit world between angel powers. And they told stories about kings going mad and having to live out in the eat grass like a cow and live out in the forest. And it's like these stories, they were captivating, and they were so powerful that when their time on earth was over, and usually they died at the hands of the mobs of the people they were trying to reach out to, but when they were gone, we had their words captured down so they could not be forgotten. And either that prophet wrote the words or those words were written by their disciples, because they were just too powerful to allow to go. We've never had a place in time like this. We've never had a circumstance like what you and I are going through right now around this planet. And in response, God is calling new messengers, just like he raised up prophets in the Old Testament. He is raising up a new kind of prophet. And many of you will never pastor a church. And yet you will shepherd large numbers of sheep. You will lead hundreds, maybe thousands to Christ. You will nurture them, but you may never pastor a church. Or maybe you will pastor a church. But this will become a powerful new arm of your ministry, and you'll start to understand that it is a larger harvest in many ways. than what you're doing in your home. You know what's cool about it too is when you become a media missionary, even if your calling is to a local church, you can be in a very remote place in a church that is small and even limited by some circumstance where you don't have spaces that are large, or maybe like many of you, you're in a restricted access nation and you don't have freedom of religion in your country. I know about that. We move around in nations like that all the time. The media will allow you to reach outside of your confined space and you can become a voice to your people. God is reaching out because the earth needs it. People are in bondage to spiritual powers. They are opening their minds now 10 hours a day, hooking into technology. Their minds are often enslaved, like wired into the matrix already, volunteering to be programmed by the world with the new way of thinking. And they have lost their way, and their families have crumbled, and they are facing life alone. Many of them don't like authority of any kind, so they also don't have leaders to help guide them. They need medication for anxiety. They need medication for sleep. They need medication to concentrate. They need medication. They need alcohol so they can celebrate. And they're already being merged into this part human, part medical, part technological, new kind of human, and things are not going well. In the country that I'm at right now, suicide is up 300%. And God is not ignorant of this. He is reaching out in love because He made these people. He made our world. He made our brothers and our sisters within the Christian fellowship, and He made those who are so far from it and who even hate it. He made them. He loves them. He's reaching out to them, and He is raising up a new kind of messenger to reach into their lives and call them to come to Him, come to the fountain, be washed, have your mind transformed, enter into new life. And you and I get to be the messengers of this new covenant. It's powerful. You know, Sherry and I were so happy. A little over 10 years ago, we were pastoring, planting churches. I was leading a seminary. We had a radio station, and life was good. We were happily doing what we loved to do, but God called us to leave that and to learn about media ministry. And we've spent 10 years doing that, and Media Light was birthed 10 years ago, and we've been training and gathering this global network, and it's coming together. And in this network, there are some of the most innovative people, and they are finding ways to use media and the arts and bring it to the world for the gospel. And so every week as we gather here, I want to go from a content block, like what I want to share something with you, like what I just did, but then I want to move it to someplace around the world, and I want you to meet somebody, probably somebody you don't know unless you're inside the Media Light family. But these are mission innovators. They are people who think differently, and their minds are open, and they are an example of what this new form of mission is all about. And today, our first interview is with Gutch Gutierrez. He is a voice talent in the Philippines. He is an illustrator. He is a video maker, and he is a Bible teacher, and he's a father. And so all that is going to roll together in his story, and he's going to tell us about God's unique way of using him. So I want to take your attention now, and let's go to the Philippines for my interview with Gutch Gutierrez. Well, we're going to have our very first interview tonight, and I have brought on somebody that I think is a perfect first guest. He's not a guest at all to me or to the Media Light insiders. This is Gutch Gutierrez, and we're really excited to have him here tonight. He is an artist. He is a voice artist. He is a Bible teacher. He's a lot of things. And I want you to see him and understand what God can do, because the theme that we have for this first episode, and actually it's the whole reason we have the Media Light Network, and that is that God is raising up a new kind of messenger. And I think that Gutch and his wife Rory from Manila, Philippines are two great examples of Christians who are creative and who are professional creatives, but they are also looking for opportunities and ways that they can speak the gospel to this generation and use creative means and media to do that. So I'm really excited to have you here tonight, Gutch. So thanks for being our very first guest.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, well, tell everybody a little bit about, let's start where it matters. Your family.
Yeah, okay, so I have a picture of my family.
Yes.
Share. So this is my family. This was from Christmas 2019. Feels like a lifetime ago before all this disease. So yeah, so this is my, it's me and Rory. And then my wife Rory, and then my son Max, and my daughter Quartz, or Quinley, named after you guys. You guys met Quinley back in last year, November, I think.
Super good. Now you both live in the Philippines.
Yes.
And you're another example of, I think, a new generation of Filipinos that I see coming up that's got a lot of national pride and a burden about your own country.
Yeah, it's a really tough time here in the Philippines, and I think the easy way is to just like pack the bags and get out of here type of thing. But I don't know. I think a person like me, I think I really think that the Lord had built me this way to minister to Filipinos, particularly to my community. That's why a lot of the efforts that we do in church, in ministry, is really like, it's really finding a certain niche. It's not talking to wide, worldwide audience. It's talking to Filipinos, young adults here in the city. We know who we're talking to. We can see who we're talking to. And it's just like that, laser focused type of ministry.
You said something
yeah.
about how you were wired. How do you think you have been built? Like, what kind of skill set do you have? And I guess secondly, did you always know you had those skills?
Very interesting question. Okay. For one thing, unlike Rory, I have never had a desire to travel or go around. In fact, I only travel because of her and roller coasters. But really, like, I really feel like just I can speak to Filipinos. I think that's what I feel where I am right now, and of course, getting to meet people from all over the world through Medialight and through other communities, it really gives us a richer picture. It gives me a richer picture of how different Filipinos are from others, and stuff. And so it gets me to know more about my people. And I don't know. I've just the skill set that I have, telling stories and even understanding the context of my own people. Somehow, I know it's like not completely. It's not a complete picture, but I think I have some form of understanding, and I'm gonna maximize whatever little that I have.
You know, one of the important things that we want to get across as our message is that there was a skill set that was needed for previous generations, for those that God would use to speak to the nations and to their communities. But that skill set has shifted, And a lot of people don't understand this, that there's a whole new world language that has come up, and the young people of the planet speak it, and it's a language of media. And
Yeah.
some people have a unique skill set that might make them feel like, I'm not a pastor. I'm not, they can't see themselves in a church job, uh, or not, maybe volunteering in church, or having some kind of a role, but I
Mm.
find less and less young people serious, sincere disciples. That's what I'm talking about. Who I find less and less of them that would say, yeah, I could see myself as a pastor. Most of the time they want to do ministry, but they recognize that the attention these days is away from the church. There's still a microphone, but it's not the church's microphone anymore. It's gone out into the world, and
Mm. Mm.
anybody can pick that microphone up and start using it, but you got to learn the language of media.
Yes.
And
Yes.
some people have a skill, like, okay, talk about you as a communicator, because
Okay.
before,
Yeah.
the only communicator gifts were I speak well in public. Well, now it's like, okay, well, with COVID, you may you may not get to speak in public again. I don't know, but there
Yeah.
are
I
a lot
mean,
of
through
other things
Zoom
you better
meetings
be
and
good at.
conferences. Yeah. Yeah. But you're right. There is one thing that I really love, and I think it's what unites everything that I do, and it's storytelling. I love I call it compact storytelling. That's what I
Hmm.
would call it. So, and it touches everything that I do. It touches the video work that I do. In the work that I do, or even in this field, and even in ministry, I think that's because it's one thing to have a video and the graphics, nice graphics, but it's another thing to to understand story, to understand story and crystallizing story in a video.
Hmm.
And I think like more than fancy graphics, all of that is just icing. Fancy graphics and nice shots and everything. Those are nice, very, very important. But more than that, I think the cake is really story. And if you have bad cake, doesn't matter how much icing you put on it, the cake's bad.
Hmm.
That's my perspective on
Well,
it.
one of the things I really like about you as a Christian creative who's doing open ministry work, like there are a lot of people that they they may be Christians and they may be in a creative field, but those two things don't ever seem to meet
Yeah.
because they keep it well hidden. They just do their secular job and say, I just try to be a light, but they're not going to open their mouth. They're not going to do a thing. And they're in
Yeah.
a great environment, because
Mm.
people's lives just falling apart. Anybody that ever gets into media work very deeply, you meet a lot of people who are really, they're living right on the edges. But what I love about you and Rory is, I got you on this time. I am definitely going to interview her too.
Yeah.
But you have a commitment to doctrine, to scripture, to teach God's word, as well as to be a storyteller, because God's word, 80% of the Bible is stories, and you
Mm.
get that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, tell
Mm-hmm.
us about your podcast.
Yeah. Man, that's a heart that I have really. It's really equipping young adults to be aware that all of us, when we are in Christ, when we are Christians, we are all full-time ministers. Doesn't
Mm.
matter if we're in like telecommunications or infrastructure or advertising, we are all full-time ministers. And so everything, there's not like a um like, oh, on Sundays I do church and then all the rest of the week it's like dog eat dog type of thing.
Mhm.
No, 24/7 we are ministers. We are doing ministry. And so the opportunity to be able to speak to people about the gospel, about even just even just like parts of the gospel, that the gospel is the answer to all these problems. The gospel
Mhm.
is the answer to all of it. those conversations are really relevant, especially outside the walls of the church.
Absolutely.
And there are people in advertising and in my field, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, um, there are people who would never go like a kilometer near a church. But you can have a nice conversation with them in your office and something like that, or in a gig like that, and those are where the conversations.
Early Christianity was that it was a people movement where everybody was a messenger, and you talked over food in your house, in their house, on the road, in the market. You just made relationships everywhere you could, and you had home groups, and it was a lot easier, to evangelize when the basis of the Christian movement was in homes. Now, the cool
Yeah,
thing that I think
community,
you've
a home
understood,
style of community. Yeah.
mhm, one of the cool things that I've seen in you and Roar is that you understand that, like, a human is a communication machine. We're
Mm.
made. Uh, Story is the operating system for our mind and our whole, like, look, my hands. You talk through your eyes. You talk through the tone of your voice. You talk
Mm.
through your gesture, the way you're
Yeah.
holding your body. Everything, like, we are made to communicate.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you discovered was voice, just how
Yes. Yeah.
rich a voice is. Tell me about that awakening and how you came to think about voices.
Okay. So it began back when I was early teens. I was watching a lot of cartoons, a lot of anime, Japanese anime, and so I just loved expressions and the dubbing and everything. So that's what really got me interested to do voice. And I realized I was just playing for many years, just playing with my voice and everything. And then many, many years after, I realized that, hey, I really love to read. And when people say that they love to read, people say that they love to learn. Right?
Yeah.
That's
I
what they
mean,
mean.
inside their
Me,
head.
yeah, they love to learn. They love to. That's what they're saying when they say that they love to read. They love to learn. Me, I love the act of reading, like uh, performing just words there. I'm reading it. So like when I do my Bible reading, I have like voices for all these people and everything. Jesus has his own voice. I love it. I really love it. So anyway, something like that. Usually when people read the Bible, it's just like they read like an insurance brochure.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna add life when I read it. So
I imagine when you teach the Bible to your own children and you have your devotions, now that you've got kids of your own, and I know how important being a father is to you. Um, I imagine those are pretty entertaining devotional times.
yeah, it's a bit too young yet for like. But I like you just since you mentioned that, I've really been thinking about how to teach the Bible to kids, and it's like I think the problem sometimes is that when we teach the Bible, we teach it in parts.
Hmm.
Like, let's talk about David and Goliath, and then let's talk about Esau, let's talk about Abraham, let's talk about Jesus, let's talk about this particular thing, right? And we don't see that there's this big story that encapsulates the whole Genesis to Revelation. And I think that before I teach verses, I think for me, I should tell them about the mega story, the once upon a
Yes.
time, happily ever after. And then all of these little verses, all of these little scenes, they fit into that big story, that big narrative. At least that's how I think I'll be teaching my children the Bible, so that they'll understand that, this verse, this is not about you. This is about a scene
Hmm.
here in this
Hmm.
time, and it fits this picture, and it's all about
Hmm.
Jesus, something like that. And so I think that makes it more, rather than like a little cookie here and little cookie cookie there. I think it's a lot
I
more
think
helpful.
you're off to a good start because you showed me a pet project a few years ago that you were working on, and it was called The Day of Darkness, and it was
Yeah.
a
Oh
book
yeah.
for children. And then
Yeah.
you showed me your early artwork of it, and I asked you to bring it to this interview. And actually, in a minute, I want you to read the book. It's going to take a little while, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And
Sure. Sure.
when I read it, I just thought, this is such a, it's so important to get God's word into children's minds. And we know that 80%, man, I wish every church understood this. 80% of all who come to Christ do it by age 14, that they
Mm.
make at least an initial connection to Jesus. That first step of discipleship, accepting him as Lord. So we ought to be, at least giving 50% of our energy to children's ministries. But a lot of churches, that's just sort of like an afterthought. So I love that the books you're writing, they're not these big grown up heady books. They're powerful. And I know you're on your second book now, and they're powerful books, and they go into the minds of children and help them. And what I got out of Day of Darkness, I'll go ahead and set it up on my perspective. I think it's a perfect jumping off point to talk about depravity, total depravity. That in
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
is the
Yeah. That is.
flesh, and there
Yes.
is this monster inside of me, and
Yes.
I need to be afraid of that, and I need to conquer that monster, and I need to at least be aware that
Mm.
I have great potential for good and I have great potential for evil, and that's in everyone. We've all got these two sides, and we get, thank God, the two trees in the garden. We get to choose which version of ourselves we're going to feed. But tell me how that. I know you released it, and it's been in bookstores all through the Philippines. And I hear it was very well accepted
Yeah.
by the children
Yeah. Thank
themselves.
God. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit unique, the story. I've always even before I was a Christian, I think I heard this phrase that I think it's C.S. Lewis who said it, that if a children's book only appeals to children, then even at that age it shouldn't be read. Like something like that. I'm
That's
butchering the quote,
good.
but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Something like um, there must be depth for children to understand, but also for adults to be able to get something out of. And I
Hmm.
think that's how I write my stories. It's like you can understand it first read, but there's like a hidden thing, a hidden message somewhere deep. And it's not in your face. Try not to be in your face in terms of that gem,
Hmm.
but I think the beauty of it is that when people discover that, it makes a lot more impact. And
Hmm.
so with the Day of Darkness, it's uh before I show it, should I show the first, just the
Yeah,
cover?
I'd actually
Or
like you to, yeah, go ahead and put it up and
okay.
just take us through. Go ahead and read the book. Everybody settle in for a bit because
Okay.
it's a children's book, but
Can
it's
I see it?
it's not your typical children's book.
Yeah. So um I'll talk about the book first. So this story, as you can see from the cover, can you see the cover?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. So from this story, I wrote this. This is my first book. I wrote this back 2010. No, 2010, 2012, somewhere around that time. It got published 2013. And when people saw it, they're like,
I
I
have to
mean,
set up
just look at the cover. It's
somewhere.
horror. And so people were thinking, this is not for children. It's horror, right? It's scary. And throughout the whole book,
Yeah.
it's
Wait,
it has this weird fantasy horror feel.
let
And
me just.
so the crazy thing is that that's what all the adults say. It's like, this is not for children. This is probably for
Make
for
this work.
older people, maybe mid-teens or whatever. So that's what people say, and I'm like, I don't know. I just write a story. That's it. And the only format to have a pictures with words is a children's story. It's a children's book. That's it. Like there's no adult picture book like this. But I didn't really intend for it to be like a children's book. So anyway, so on 2014 there was the National Book Development Board. It was like bringing together the best of children's books. And so when the adults panel had
Does that work?
chose the 5 best books for children of 2014, they didn't choose this,
Yeah.
but they had, and I didn't expect it to be chosen. I was there. I wasn't even dressed properly, I think. So, but the thing is, they had for that first year, the first time they had the Kids' Choice Award for the very first time, and they got like I don't know how many kids, a dozen or 2 dozen kids to choose through the hundred books that they've been given and choose their best book. And it was so surprising is that they chose my book. So the adults chose other books, but the kids chose my book. And it was so weird. And at the same time, it told me something that these kids can handle bigger things. Maybe we're looking down on children when we think, oh, this is too complicated for children. But then, in today's world, we have Minecraft, we have Warcraft, we have so many, Adventure Time, and so many things for children. They can handle richer stories, I think, more creative stories. And so that was my intention, I think. And that's why I really went deeper in on the second book, which is a post-apocalyptic story for children. Much
Yeah, we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, and only Jesus can do that.
Well, I love.
So at least that's
I love
how.
that you are taking the spiritual formation of a child's heart seriously, and I'm really proud of you for this, Gutch, and for your
Thanks.
ongoing efforts to bring deep things to a quick click generation that changes the channel, every minute and a half and doesn't really think very deeply. And so thank you for using the gifts that God has given you and for not just putting them to work to earn a living. I'm glad you do that, and I know you do it with excellence, but also that you intentionally let your light shine. Okay, super good. Any last word to any young person out there who's an artist, or they're just crazy about stories and they wonder how they could ever use that for the Lord as a witness?
Sometimes I think there are great stories out there, but the storytelling is bad. So it's not just about having a great story, but also it's having a great how to tell the story. So I think that's something worth looking at, how to tell stories and not just have a story. At the same time, as ministers of the word, we have to know what we are teaching. We have to know the truth of the Bible, and it takes a lot of hard work to study and understand what the Bible is telling us, what the Bible is actually, even just what the Bible is. And it's so important that if we are speaking stories about truth, we have to know the truth. And then we can have a richer idea of the limitations that we have in terms of what stories are better than others. I would say that we could be like Nathans to Davids in this generation. The people don't like it because it's in the Bible. But if you tell them a story that a powerful story, they might get convicted and say that it's there in the Word, that story. And maybe if we can find that, maybe we can be like the Nathans, to convict, to be a voice of prophecy in this time, that the voice of warning, especially in these very dark times, that people are looking for answers everywhere, but it's been the same answer again and again from the beginning of time. Man has sinned and has fallen short of the glory of God. And that's the,
Yeah.
we are the problem. We are the problem, all of us.
Yeah,
So,
and God has a solution.
and God has a
We get to
solution.
be the ones to tell
Yeah.
that amazing story.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
and
that's all we're going to be able to talk. I could go on and on. Well, that brings us to the end of our very first Media Light podcast. So, yay,
We
we've all
did
made it.
It's a reality. You
All
guys,
right.
we made history today. Yay. Our community.
Here's
We
two
love you.
things. Here's two things I'd like you to do. Number one, can you please share this podcast with your friends? Just click and share. You'll see this. This video will become a permanent video on this page. So just click it, get it out to your friends. Let's get as many people involved. And secondly, if you'd like it, we have a free course for you. You can go to MediaLightOnline.com. MediaLightOnline.com. Well, we'll see you again next week. The mic is yours now.